When we deploy to different environments, normally we have to update the values that we have inside our configuration files as well. As an example, I'm in my development environment and I'm in GitHub desktop. So if I see all the files that I have in my project, you will see that normally our configurations are either in XML files, for example, like this file, or they are in JSON files. So this is one configuration file which is in XML format, and we have another one which is in JSON format. So as you see now, I have another configuration that is in JSON format. And normally you need to change the value of some of these configuration items when you deploy to a different environment. So for example, in this demo, what we want to do is that we want to change the value of connection string, the default connection string. In dev environment, it should be dev.database.local. In production, for example, it should be prod.database.local. So I will explain how we do this. In order to perform this, obviously you need to have your configuration checked into GitHub, and we go to our project, and for every item that we want to update, we need a variable. So we have to go to variables and add a variable. The name of the variable is basically from the root to the last bit of the configuration item. For example, in this case, because my configuration item starts with connection strings, the name should be connection string followed by a colon and then the next level, which is default. You can provide a default value, for example, dev, but then this dev only makes sense in dev environment. And then we can provide extra value. For example, we can say add value, and the value for production is prod, but the scope is prod environment. And we click on save. So now we have one variable with two values, and each value is available to a different environment. If I go back to process, in every process that basically deploys a package, copies the files, extracts a package, or anything like that, you will see there is a button called configure features. This is very similar to build features in TeamCity. So every time you configure a process or a step in the process of your project, you have access to some extra features. So for the purpose of this demo, what we need is that we want to replace the value of app-settings.json files. So we don't use the .config files. We want to use the variables in JSON files. So we choose JSON configuration variables. If you want to update the values inside your web.config file, any configuration that its name ends to .config, instead of JSON configuration variables, you have to use configuration variables, because if you do this, as you see, Octopus Deploy will open all the .config files and look for any configuration item whose name is equal to the name of the variable. But for the JSON, you don't need to change the configuration item. So we click on OK, and after that we have to put the name of the file here. So the name of my file is app-settings.json, this file. So we can just copy it or just type it, put it in here. And the extension is JSON, and we save. So now if I deploy, the value that will sit in here, so the value that will be assigned to the default configuration item will be different for each environment. So let's go to Octopus Deploy and create a release. I'm gonna choose production channel, and let's deploy this. And we deploy to production. Okay, so let's go to the server. So this is my server, and websites must be in C application, I think. And I have dev and prod. So if I open prod, let's open it with Notepad. You will see that the value of this is set to prod, and that is because I put prod in my Octopus Deploy. So if I go to variables, I set prod in here. If you want to put, for example, something that makes more sense, for example, prod.database.local, or you can also do dev.database.local. You can do this as well. So I have a new deployment. If I open app settings, you will see that again, the new value that I put in Octopus Deploy appears in here. Now, if I go to the other environment, which was dev, now we have dev.database.local. So again, it's a different value. So what we saw in here is basically we managed to change the values inside a configuration file for our project. And this is very useful because when you build your code in TeamCity, you don't know where you are deploying it. So these packages, they are just compiled code. But at this stage, we don't know which environment this is going to be deployed to. But if we go to Octopus Deploy, in here, we can decide which environment is receiving that version of the package, and then once they receive the package, which of these values has to be applied. And this is very flexible. I hope that you enjoyed this lecture as well.